Top 10 NBA Draft Busts. What's worse than never making it to the NBA? Getting drafted in the top 10 and failing so badly that your name becomes a warning to every future player. When viewers see this list, they're asking, who are the biggest failures? How did they waste such incredible opportunities? What destroyed careers that should have been legendary? Here's the truth. Some players get drafted with championship expectations, then crash and burn so spectacularly that they become cautionary tales. These aren't just bad players, these are disasters that cost teams everything, destroy franchises, and prove that talent means nothing without the right mindset. Let's dive into the top 10 NBA draft busts of all time. Number 10. Hasheem Thabeet, 2009. At number 10, we start with Hasheem Thabeet, the second overall pick in the 2009 draft. Standing 7'3" with a massive wingspan, Thabeet looked like the perfect defensive anchor. The Memphis Grizzlies thought they'd found their franchise center for the next decade. Instead, they got one of the worst stat lines ever for a top 2 pick. Just 2.2 points and 2.7 rebounds per game across 5 seasons in the NBA. Think about that. The second overall pick, averaging numbers you'd expect from a high school bench player. Thabeet was too slow, too raw offensively, and couldn't keep up with the pace of the NBA. Memphis made it even worse by passing on James Harden, Stephen Curry, and DeMar DeRozan to take him. Harden became an MVP, Curry became the greatest shooter ever, Thabeet became a punchline. But being slow and soft is one thing. What happens when a player has all the talent in the world, but his own body betrays him? That brings us to number 9. Number 9, Markelle Fultz, 2017. The number 1 pick in 2017, Markelle Fultz. Coming out of college, he looked like the complete package: smooth shooting stroke, great athleticism, and basketball IQ off the charts. Philadelphia even traded up to get him, believing this was the final piece to pair with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Then, everything unraveled. Fultz developed thoracic outlet syndrome, a rare shoulder condition that literally broke down his shooting mechanics. His once smooth jumper turned into one of the ugliest shots fans had ever seen. He played just 33 games in his first 2 seasons with Philly. The city that once embraced him quickly turned. Fans booed him every time he shot. The Sixers gave up on him, trading him to Orlando for almost nothing. Now, to his credit, Fultz has battled back and rebuilt his career with the Magic, but he'll never live up to the expectations of a number 1 overall pick. And while injuries derailed Fultz, our next bust is proof that sometimes you can have every tool imaginable and still not care enough to use them. Number 8. Michael Olowokandi, 1998. Michael Olowokandi, first overall pick in 1998, nicknamed the Candyman. Olowokandi was supposed to revolutionize the center position. At 7 feet tall, with mobility, he looked like a prototype for the modern NBA. The Clippers thought they finally landed their franchise cornerstone. Instead, they got a center who averaged just 8.3 points and 6.8 rebounds per game across 500 games. Not bad for a role player, but a disaster for a number 1 overall pick. What stings more is who the Clippers passed on: Vince Carter, Paul Pierce, Dirk Nowitzki, and Antoine Jamison. 4 future stars for one guy who never seemed interested in playing with fire. At least Olowokandi had a lengthy career, even if underwhelming. But our next story, a player who could have been great if not for some of the worst injury luck in NBA history. Number 7, Greg Oden, 2007. Greg Oden, first overall pick in 2007. This one hurts. Coming out of Ohio State, Oden had it all: size, strength, defensive instincts, and the look of the next great NBA center. Portland believed he was the safer pick over Kevin Durant, and at the time, many agreed. Instead, Oden's knees betrayed him. He played only 105 NBA games in his career, with just 82 coming in Portland across 5 years. Every time he showed flashes of dominance, another surgery cut him down. Meanwhile, Kevin Durant became one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. Portland fans had to watch their rival draft a future legend while they were left with what could have been. Oden wasn't a bad player, he was a tragic one, a reminder that sometimes the game isn't lost on the court, but in the training room. But while Oden's story is sad, our next bust is just frustrating because his failure wasn't about injuries, it was about simply not being good enough for the NBA. Number 6, Adam Morrison, 2006. Adam Morrison, third overall pick in 2006. Morrison lit up college basketball, averaging nearly 29 points per game at Gonzaga. He was hyped as the next great scorer, often compared to Larry Bird. The Charlotte Bobcats drafted him to be their offensive savior. Instead, Morrison flamed out in just 3 seasons. He averaged 11.8 points per game as a rookie, but quickly declined due to poor defense, lack of athleticism, and a devastating ACL injury. By 2010, he was out of the league, though he did win 2 championships with the Lakers as a little-used bench player. Morrison proved that elite college scoring doesn't always translate to NBA stardom. But speaking of championship rings, our next bust got one too, even though he barely stepped on the floor. Number 5. Darko Milicic, 2003. Darko Milicic, second overall pick in the legendary 2003 draft. Detroit had the chance to draft Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, or Chris Bosh. Instead, they picked a 7-foot Serbian teenager who was more potential than production. The result? One of the most infamous busts in NBA history. Darko averaged just 1.6 points per game in his first 2 seasons, earning the nickname the Human Victory Cigar because he only played in blowouts. Yes, he won a championship with Detroit in 2004, but he barely left the bench. Darko eventually had a decade-long career as a role player, but when you're drafted ahead of 3 Hall of Famers, even mediocrity looks like failure. And speaking of Hall of Famers, our next player's bust status is magnified by one simple fact. He was drafted before Michael Jordan. Number 4, Sam Bowie, 1984. Sam Bowie, second overall pick in 1984. This is one of the most infamous draft stories in sports history. The Houston Rockets took Hakeem Olajuwon at number 1, a Hall of Famer. Then the Portland Trail Blazers, needing a center, chose Sam Bowie at number 2. That meant they passed on the greatest player of all time, Michael Jordan, who went 3rd. Bowie actually wasn't terrible when healthy. He averaged 10.9 points and 7.5 rebounds in his career. The problem? He could never stay healthy. Leg injuries plagued him from college through the pros. He played just 139 games in his first 5 seasons. Bowie became the poster child for draft mistakes, not because he was untalented, but because his selection changed NBA history. Imagine Jordan alongside Clyde Drexler in Portland. Instead, Bowie's name will forever be remembered as the man drafted before MJ. But if Bowie was doomed by injuries, our next bust proves that sometimes failure comes not from bad luck, but from simply not being built for the NBA spotlight. Number 3, Jan Vesely, 2011. Jan Vesely, 6th overall pick in 2011. Washington thought they were drafting the next great European forward. Vesely was athletic, 6'11", and versatile, the kind of modern big guy every team wants. Instead, he was completely overwhelmed. Vesely played 162 NBA games across 3 seasons, averaging just 3.6 points and 3.5 rebounds per game. He couldn't shoot, couldn't defend, and looked lost on the floor. After flaming out of the NBA, Vesely returned to Europe where he became a star and even a EuroLeague champion. His story proves that some players can dominate overseas, but just aren't built for the NBA. At least Vesely found redemption abroad. Our next player, he never found success anywhere, and his failure is so infamous that many call him the worst draft pick of all time. Number 2, Anthony Bennett, 2013. Anthony Bennett, the first overall pick in 2013. This was a shocker on draft night. Most experts didn't even have Bennett projected in the top 10, yet Cleveland took him first overall. The result? The worst number 1 pick in NBA history. Bennett averaged just 4.4 points and 3.1 rebounds per game over 4 seasons, never starting more than 4 games in a year. His conditioning was poor, his motivation worse, and he quickly found himself bouncing between teams. By his 4th season, Bennett was out of the NBA entirely. No player in history has fallen from the first overall pick to irrelevance so fast. But there's one name bigger, one bust so infamous that his failure didn't just ruin his career, it changed how the NBA approached the draft forever. Number 1, Kwame Brown, 2001. Kwame Brown, the first overall pick in 2001. Brown made history as the first high school player ever drafted first overall. Michael Jordan himself pushed Washington to draft him, and that's what makes his story so devastating. Brown lasted 12 years in the NBA, averaging 6.6 points and 5.5 rebounds. By normal standards, that's a solid role player, but as the number 1 pick, a disaster. He never developed into the franchise cornerstone he was supposed to be. Worse, Jordan's tough love mentoring style reportedly shattered his confidence instead of building it. Kwame became the poster child for failed potential. His struggles made teams more hesitant about drafting high school players for years. That's why he tops this list. Kwame Brown wasn't just a bust, he was the bust that changed NBA history. The human cost. These aren't just statistics. These are real human beings whose dreams were crushed on the biggest stage. Anthony Bennett went from unknown prospect to household name for all the wrong reasons. Markelle Fultz literally forgot how to do the thing that made him the #1 pick. Greg Oden had to watch Kevin Durant become a legend while he was in surgery. Darko Milicic became a farmer in Serbia after his NBA career flamed out. Kwame Brown had Michael Jordan believe in him and still couldn't live up to it. The mental health toll of being labeled a bust is something fans rarely think about. These players don't just lose games, they lose confidence, identity, and in many cases, their love for the sport. The ripple effects. Draft busts don't just ruin careers, they change entire franchises. Portland passed on Michael Jordan for Sam Bowie. Detroit chose Darko Milicic over Wade, Bosh, and Melo. Cleveland wasted the #1 pick on Anthony Bennett. Philadelphia gave up assets for Markelle Fultz and got nothing. These mistakes haunt franchises for decades. The psychology of failure. Why do draft busts happen? It starts with expectations. High picks aren't given time to grow, they're expected to dominate immediately. Most can't handle that pressure. Then there's injuries, the factor no scout can predict. Greg Oden and Sam Bowie are reminders of how fragile greatness can be. And finally, fit. Some players like Jan Vesely succeed in Europe but fail in the NBA. Others like Adam Morrison can dominate in college but not at the next level. These 10 names prove that talent isn't enough. Opportunity isn't enough. Even Michael Jordan's blessing isn't enough. Sometimes the NBA just breaks people. But that's also what makes NBA success so meaningful. Every LeBron James makes the Anthony Bennetts hurt more. Every Tim Duncan makes the Kwame Browns look worse. Draft busts remind us that for every dream realized, there's another turned into a nightmare. Thanks for watching this journey through basketball's biggest disasters. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe for more deep dives into the wild world of NBA history. And remember, next year's draft is just around the corner, and hope springs eternal, even when it shouldn't.